Bart, let's do it. Clinical
Okay.
insights.
Yeah. So I got 2 clinical insights I want to share. And again, if you're new to the show, awesome. Thanks. I love having you here. If you're back for, a second or a third or 100, show, awesome. Thank you for being here. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading the love. And especially a topic like this, autoimmune. A lot of people are diagnosed with it. And the bummer is once they have that diagnosis, for the most part, the traditional way of going about it is that you have blank and you have it forever. And we'll talk about the traditional approaches toward that. And that's not an awesome approach, because rarely does the human get better. So we'll talk about that. So keep doing the thing, keep sharing it out, keep spreading love. So 2 clinical insights. The first one is 30-year-old female. And this is interesting. So right now we are in the midst of running our cleanse. So this is our annual cleanse. Yeah. So, which is always fun, 10, 21 days. And the young girl who came in, she's in her 30s. I made the assumption, because she's cleansed with us several times before, how's your cleanse going? Oh, I didn't cleanse this year. And I said, okay, I'm not attached to it. I would love for everyone to cleanse, but some people don't. And I said, well, why not? She said, well, I just didn't want to fail at it. And that, so never mind the cleanse. For anything you think you want to do, never let the reason of failure be the reason you don't do it. I can't emphasize that enough. So the only way she could fail at a cleanse, or anything for that matter, would be not doing it and not learning from it. So the conversation went absolutely awesome. We talked about getting her on board to get something, but it had to challenge her. And I said, and I know her well enough. And our conversation went something like this. I said, okay, thank you for sharing, but I'm not letting you off the hook. She said, I know you weren't going to. I think that's why I just told you that. So we then decided on some things that would be very difficult for her to do. So they would be very challenging for her to do, mostly upstairs, meaning mostly mental challenges. And I really think our cleanse is, and I think as we get in a couple of weeks into it now, or for most people, or at least a good week into it, they discover that it's not the eating, it's not the food, it's the mental component of being on a cleanse. That's the most challenging part. It's changing our patterns. Who do we need to become? Who do we need to be during this phase? All of those things, that's what really comes up for people. So the clinical insight here is really, listen, 2 things. 1, never allow yourself to not engage in something in your life, no matter what it is, your health, your wealth, your relationships, because you're afraid of failing at it. That is, it's just such a bummer to even hear that. And I get that that's real. The second part of it is make sure you are challenging yourself this year. So let's just say if you planned out, you're mapped out this year, upcoming year, maybe you have some goals, some insights, some things that you want to do this year. Make certain and sure that some of them are hard. In our conversation that we had, I told her, if she keeps lowering the bar to only things she should succeed, she becomes a weaker human being. So allowing ourselves to fail is really the victory. So that was number 1. That was a nice little clinical insight. And then number 2, this is just a really fun one. And there's a good chance that this individual will be listening tonight. So I'm going to leave names out, only say that she's female in her 50s, and she just went on a family vacation. But during that was the week of the big kind of the cold weather that swept through the country. And they were up in like a cabin, and they lost power, and it was super stressful. And a whole group of people, and there was all these other components that made it super stressful, and everyone's dropping like flies, getting sick, except grandma. So she's the grandma. And she was super excited. She was super excited just to share with me that all these years of stacking all these little things, and no doubt along the way, things like losing a little weight and, and taking care of yourself, aesthetically was important to her. But this, I could just see her glowing, because she was the healthy one, and she was also the one that everyone was going to. And this was interesting. She was able to help them out because she brought her travel kit. She brought her Conjuplex, she brought her Angiographisc, and she brought her Zypan, I think. I know she brought her Conjuplex and her Angiographisc, and that kept her healthy through. So she was very proud. And that's another thing I think we forget sometimes when we're taking action for our own body, whether it's exercise or we're eating better, we're taking our vitamins, whatever it may be. When we take action, we also get to have pride and passion in ourselves. So just a nice little clinical insight of someone that is stacking up and had an event take place, And she was able to see all of these hard efforts come into play.
What a sweet reward for all of that effort. And not only was she able to take care of herself, but she became a resource for others. It's incredible.
What the story went on a little bit farther. And what's really fun about it is that now all the kids who, to some degree, grandma was kind of mocked a little bit. And I know some people understand when I say that, because she would take her vitamins and whatnot. But she enjoys so much teaching some of the younger family members. And we had a nice little conversation about how it's fascinating how someone at 15 years old, because I didn't have that awareness when I was 15, that so, and I remember taking medicines when I was young. They had to taste like grape. They had to taste like orange or apple, because I wouldn't take them if not. And that would be the wrestling match. There's no way that I would take something that didn't taste yummy. And somehow she's convincing some of her grandchildren to take these herbs like andrographis or maybe a little adrenal tonic or something that don't necessarily taste like grape juice. So I think, wow, just
what a way to like lead from love, truly, like, and by example.
Yeah, 100%. So two nice little clinical insights to two different situations. So, all right. So big topic tonight, autoimmune. So I want to start by just kind of defining, what does autoimmune mean? So there's a whole bunch of things. I'm going to kind of list maybe like a top 10 here, but autoimmune essentially means when your own antibodies, the antibodies that you have in your body, start to attack your own cells. And this can happen in different areas in your body. And depending on the area that it happens, it typically is accompanied by a name. Okay. So you can have an autoimmune condition with your thyroid, and we may call that Hashimoto's. You may have autoimmune condition where antibodies are attacking your nervous system, and we may call that MS. We may have some autoimmune condition with antibodies attacking parts of your gut, and we can call that celiac disease. We could call it diverticulitis. We could call it ulcerative colitis, Crohn's. Those all fall into that category. So depending on where it is usually how we name the autoimmune condition. And like I mentioned right when we started here, unfortunately, this list is growing in massive, massive amounts. So about 80 to 100 million people, I know it's a broad range there, 80 to 100 million people right now are diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. That's a huge number. And at the root cause, and we're going to talk about use that word many times. So the root cause is a massive imbalance in the body. And a lot of it stems from lifestyle. And we'll get into some of the root causes, and then also some of the things that we can look out for and what we can do. And then at some point, I'm going to hold on you to remind me, there's really phases of autoimmune conditions. And there's a reason why they go undiagnosed for sometimes for 10 or 12 years. And then someone finally says, well, this doctor was better than all the others because they discovered this. And it's not as black and white as that, yet I think that's a good conversation. So things like Hashimoto's, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, psoriasis, a skin condition that shows up in the skin, lupus, which is at the root of an adrenal issue, Graves' disease, I think I mentioned. I think that's a thyroid condition. Rheumatoid arthritis, a joint condition. Scleroderma, connective tissue. Multiple sclerosis. Addison's is another adrenal issue. Hashimoto's, I mentioned, is a thyroid condition. Graves' disease is a thyroid condition. And there's many others. There's about 100 different ones, and they keep adding to this list. And the reason I mentioned kind of where they are is there are definitely some commonalities and major ones. Gut and hormone, and we'll put connective tissue and skin kind of all in one. And you take those three categories, everything to do with your joints and your skin, all of your hormones, and then everything to do with your gut. And if we just targeted at those and improving health or our life in those categories or creating balance in those, huge, massive changes, huge, massive. So that's going to be some of the emphasis. So if you've been diagnosed in any of that list, or it could be, there's many, many other, like I said, there's probably about 100. I think roughly those are that's probably the top 10 list. You can put in type 1 diabetes in there as well. All right. So Those are the top 10. And the challenge is that if you have an autoimmune condition, there's a lot of symptoms, yet it's usually going to be specific to that tissue or that organ or that gland. So there's not necessarily a lot of overlap. I say that, and then there are some obvious ones. So the obvious is almost all of those will be accompanied with some level of fatigue. And the reason that is because your body's fighting itself. And it's hard work for the body to fight itself. So the longer those things go, it's not uncommon that these individuals will express some type of fatigue. And nowadays though, fatigue, it really falls in the basket of pretty much anything when it comes to our health. So that's not very helpful. Inflammation is at the root of the concern. So when you have an autoimmune condition, you have antibodies and they're beating up your own cells. And that creates an inflammatory situation on the inside of your body. The challenge here is through the traditional medical system, which is a wonderful system and it has its flaws. Traditionally, what'll happen when they approach an autoimmune condition is they're going to do whatever and however they can. They're going to suppress the inflammation. The single most common way to suppress it is using steroids, particularly prednisone. And this is a challenge because from the symptom perspective, certainly you can suppress that symptom for a period of time. But the root cause of why the inflammation's, taking place in the first place, it doesn't stop. So you can be suppressing the symptom with prednisone, with a steroid, but the thing that is damaging that tissue, that organ, that gland, so maybe it's your thyroid gland, maybe it's rheumatoid arthritis in your hands are hurting every day, and you notice they're hurting, so you're going on steroids. So the damage to the joint is still happening, but now it's just getting longer and deeper and longer and deeper because we're just suppressing the symptom.
So when we think about inflammation in regards to these autoimmune conditions, it would be different than like how we would think about inflammation from, let's say, like using our bodies and like exercise, right?
Very much so. So, thanks for that distinction, because when we exercise, we get joint inflammation, we get tissue breakdown, and yes, we can create inflammation as a result of, say, hard exercise. And in that situation, inflammation is technically important because it is also signaling the brain to send a certain amount of vitamins, nutrients, and vitamins and tissues, and even hormones for that matter, for repair agents. So not all inflammation is bad. In fact, the inflammation that takes place right after a workout is very, very important. It's always in balance relative to how hard the workout is. And the better and cleaner the body is, the signaling takes place, you get some inflammation, hopefully it's for a short period of time. You have all the tools, the vitamins, nutrients, hormones available and ready to help heal the body. And that inflammation served an incredibly important part of the healing process. This inflammation is a little bit different. This is systemic. This is on the inside, and your body is literally fighting yourself. And we'll walk through the testing category in just a moment here. So it is important that we recognize there's a distinction between the two different types of inflammation. And just because I have inflammation, even though I'm telling you that it's the root cause of destruction in the body, although it's not the root cause that we have to go after to eliminate to improve the human function. We have to get to the root cause of what is causing the body to have an autoimmune response. That's what we're looking for.
And in this case, because when we think about autoimmune, we think systemic, would you find that sometimes folks will experience like more than one of these conditions at a time?
Yeah, so the longer someone has an autoimmune condition, more likely another one's going to show up. And that is for that the reason being is because the body's out of balance. There's something going on out of balance within the body. And now essentially the immune system has gone haywire. These antibodies, they come from our immune system and they're going haywire. And as a result of it, they're starting to attack tissue within the body. And it's not uncommon that there's a primary autoimmune condition that ends up getting all the focus and we're trying to eliminate that symptom. Let's say it's Hashimoto's, and maybe they just take thyroid medications, which may do nothing for the actual Hashimoto's, but it may make the labs look normal. Or you might be something like rheumatoid arthritis, and you're taking some kind of joint medication, or again, an anti-inflammatory pain reliever, and you relieve the symptoms, but we're still destructive to the tissue. And then there's in the background, we're also now those antibodies are attacking other tissues. They're just behind. So it's not uncommon that if someone's been diagnosed with a autoimmune condition, it's not uncommon if they haven't had a plan and a strategy put into place. And tonight, I'm hopefully going to give that map to how we do this. I guess right here, I should insert that I'm definitely not diagnosing or treating anyone as their primary doctor here. Make sure that you do talk to your doctor and how to do things. So again, just I guess that's a little disclaimer. Take my information and bring it to your doctor and see if that helps out. All right. So yeah. So back to that. Once we have that first autoimmune condition, if there isn't a strategy to get after the root cause of why that tissue or organ is being destroyed or having a destructive situation, and it keeps going, it is almost a certainty that the second, third, and maybe even fourth autoimmune condition is on its way.
So as you say that, I can tell you I am so excited that you will have some simple ways in which we can address this. But before we get to the solutions, I wonder, Bart, could you tell us a little bit about the common causes of autoimmune conditions?
Yes, and that's also going to kind of uncover a lot of where we're going to go with this. So
Beautiful.
I would say across the board, some of the common causes, one, pro-inflammatory foods. So you're bringing things in through your mouth. We're either eating them or drinking things that are causing inflammation in the body. So that would be a simple one, number one. Infections, huge. And we'll tackle this just a little bit. And those infections could come from things like a tick bite, like Lyme. That's a legit on the radar for causing autoimmune issues. Gut health, no doubt, this would have an asterisk next to. I should probably mention this one first. Something called leaky gut. We've talked a lot about this. In fact, this upcoming year, I think I'm doing a tour of about 7 different cities where I will be talking about leaky gut, how to heal it, adrenal function, a lot of hormone stuff. And it's that important. And that many different doctors are now wanting to learn more about how do we heal up leaky gut, because it plays a role in so many other health conditions, as we're about to discover tonight. Toxins, specifically things like heavy metals. This is where you can have an underlying heavy metal in the body for long periods of time, and it's just down-regulating the body, causing inflammation. So we have toxins that can do it. We have foods that we can do it. We can have leaky gut that can do it. Stress is a huge one. And stress is always an X factor, the repetitiveness of stress. And we're going to throw in there poor sleep. Hormones, massively imbalanced hormones, too much hormones, too little hormones can inhibit or put too much stress on things like the thyroid gland, on glands like the adrenal glands. So those are probably the top ones. Food, lifestyles in general. And lifestyle in general is a no-brainer, yet if we are constantly pushing the human body, what's this saying, burning the candle at both ends, right?
At both ends, yeah.
Yeah. If we're always burning it up, these are the kind of things that can eventually happen if we're not mindful of how the body and what the body needs to repair. We need sleep. We need time to repair the microbiome. We need time for the body's tissues to replenish. We need time for the body to be able to detoxify the system. So we can handle a lot of the things I just mentioned. We can handle, quite frankly, getting bit by a tick. We can handle some heavy metals here and there. We can handle some toxins. Yet when we get everything in disarray, that's when we get in trouble. And in today's fast-paced lifestyle, and there's a lot of stress, sometimes that process of really kind of encountering a good lifestyle just kind of gets thrown by the wayside. So hopefully tonight I can dial that in a little bit.
I think it's important that when you mention stress, it is like kind of the big picture stress. So yes, we all know what it feels like to have a specific scenario there may be stress around, but there's so many factors that play in these days.
There is. And when I say stress, more often than not, people think just emotional stress. And that's not the only type of stress. I'm talking about you're so busy like you're always on the go stress, or you're not sleeping stress, or there's toxins, or there's, or leaky gut. It could be from an inside out situation.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got some understanding now of the causes of what leads to these autoimmune conditions. Bart, should we tap into the phases?
Yes, and this is an important part for all of us to at least just kind of hear out, for you, your friends, your doctors, et cetera, to understand that there are different phases that a person will go through when they have an autoimmune condition. Phase one, we'll just call it the silent phase. You don't know. And we stumble upon it by luck. And that could be an awesome thing. So there's one of the reasons, I'll give you a perfect example. So we run a comprehensive male and female panel in our office. So if someone says, Doc, I want to run labs, you got to have a good idea what I should run. And we say, yes, we have a comprehensive panel that we really recommend as what we call kind of our annual panel. Now, one of the most common autoimmune conditions that we're going to run into that's very, very easy to essentially diagnose would be Hashimoto's, which is an issue with the thyroid where you have antibodies destroying your thyroid. Running a normal thyroid panel will not show this. And this is important to understand. So you could have said, well, I've checked my thyroid, it looks fine. You can have normal markers, but behind it, you can have a silent autoimmune condition. So we run in our panel, we do run Hashimoto markers, or I should call them thyroid antibody markers. And the reality is about 50% of women who have any type of hyper or hypothyroidism often have Hashimoto's alongside of that. And if we catch that in the silent mode, here's what's really cool about it. Meaning we ran the markers and we said, hey, Whit, guess what? Good news, you didn't know this, but you have an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's. It's in the silent mode. You don't have all the symptoms. You haven't gained the weight. You haven't lost your hair. You don't have the constipation, the things that come along with thyroid dysfunction. You don't have any of that. And we discover this. We say, and the good news is we can do something about it now, so it never actually exposes itself and it never damages the actual gland. Because when these autoimmune conditions are left by themselves and we ignore them and we sedate them and when I say sedate them, meaning we suppress the symptoms. So we're just kind of covering up. That's when the damage is being done. That's when the damage. So someone like that has rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm using these two as an example because I think people have heard about them. Rheumatoid arthritis, you often in later phases, and which we'll talk about in just a moment, like phase 3, you can see the damage in the hand. And it should never, hopefully it never gets that far. All right, so phase 1, the antibodies are there if you're testing for them. Yet usually it's silent and there's no symptoms. Phase 2, you start to have symptoms. You're starting to recognize that you do have, again, we'll talk about thyroid just because it's easy. You recognize that your hair is getting thin, your eyebrows are getting thin on the lateral, the lateral part of your eyebrows. You recognize that it's harder and harder to lose weight. In fact, you're gaining weight. You're getting tired more often. You're getting constipation. Your skin changing a little bit. Maybe you're losing some hair. And these are all common symptoms of someone who has hypothyroidism. And again, now this time you have symptoms and the antibodies are there. Unfortunately, even with today's knowledge, it's getting better, but still most thyroid panels that people bring into me are incomplete. And if you've ever been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, it is my suggestion that, if you've ever been diagnosed with thyroid dysfunction of any sort, it is my suggestion that you absolutely must, you must get your antibodies checked. You need to know the status of them. And if you have an autoimmune disease, otherwise, you can take all the meds you want. The gland will still be attacked. And that's really important for us to understand. Just because you're on thyroid meds does not mean the gland isn't going to be attacked. There's an autoimmune condition, and it's not necessarily relevant. It's not going to make much of a difference whether or not you're on the medication if you're not handling what's taking place with the actual autoimmune condition.
And if someone wanted to get those antibodies checked, Bart, we could help them with that.
Correct. Yeah, so that's, that's part of our standard thyroid panel. We could just run a thyroid panel, which will include those markers, and including other things like vitamin D and T3 and free T3 and T4 and reverse T3, all the other ones, so we know the true function of that. And this can be done. So the interesting thing about the testing is that there are also broad spectrum antibody tests. I'll tell you what, hold that thought. I want to go back to these phases before I lose them. All right. So phase one, silent phase, but the antibodies will be there. Phase two, antibodies there again. You're starting to see some signs and some symptoms. And this is the important phase, especially now in light of how many different places I know people are practicing functional medicine. This is where the functional medicine practitioner really shines, because the history that they're going to take, and because they're looking not necessarily at just relieving the symptom, but they're going to be looking for the root cause and the history here, they're going to recognize that there's a lot more at play here. And this is where they may then decide, let's do some further testing. And I will tell you, the testing can get really elaborate. Inevitably, someone will say, can you just run a test that has all the autoimmune conditions on? And there are some, and there are some broader ones called an ANA test. And there are tests that in our normal blood work we run that your doctors that are practicing functional medicine are really looking at the different symptoms and signs, and we're taking all the information together. We can use a lot of the things that are normal, that are on a standard CBC, like your C-reactive proteins and ESR rates, and we can look at all those other information and start to, it'll draw these little red flags of what else is going on. And there's a very specific test for rheumatoid arthritis. There's a very specific test for celiac disease. The challenge is if you try to do them all, it can cost a lot of money. So my suggestion in just a moment here, what we're going to do about this, the beauty is that no matter what you have, if you have this foundation of taking action, you're going to be in great shape. So phase three of autoimmune condition is when really, and so that phase two, quite frankly, that's where it gets pretty tricky. This is where the individual who has something going on with their body, they're saying there's something going on, and they've been to 3, 4, 5 docs or more, and it's going on for years. They know there's something wrong going on, and it's difficult because the symptoms aren't always spot on. And then finally, one of their doctors, let's say it's with their, your thyroid, they run their autoimmune condition and go, oh my goodness, look. And then hopefully they have a strategy other than just suppressing it with anti-inflammatory drugs. And then so that in that phase right there, it's not uncommon. People will spend 10 years in that symptomatic, not doing so good, trying everything under the sun, but because underneath it all, there is 1, 2, or more autoimmune conditions, the body's always getting beat up. So that's phase number 2. And then phase number 3, it's when you're full-blown, you're diagnosed as a result of it's full-blown, meaning there's a degenerative process taking place. So I'll give you an example of rheumatoid arthritis. The hands have been in pain for years and years and years. You can start to see some knuckles change, and you're just kind of blowing it off. Oh, maybe this is my diet a little bit, and it might be. And you're doing little changes here and there, but not really getting on top of it. And as a result, 5 years go by, 10 years go by or more. You've used a bunch of anti-inflammatories and pain relievers. And next thing you know, your hands, the knuckles in your hand have literally been destroyed. And unfortunately, at that point, is there things we can do? Absolutely. But when those tissues, organs, and systems, those glands get damaged and destroyed, often there's not anything we can do. We can keep the body functioning the best we can with what we got. But the bottom line, if your thyroid gland has been eaten away, then we're going to have to do other things that if you're meaning that there's sometimes you're going to have to use a medication or have to use something else because this destruction is already too far gone. So,
Bart, I know that you've had the chance to work with lots of folks who are either in the silent or maybe this reactive phase where they've talked to a bunch of people and just have a sense, and to have a place to land with someone who has a strategy is so helpful.
Yes, and the good news, and of course, we love helping as many people as we possibly can. And the good news is a lot of good men and women out there right now. There really is, and this is what's fascinating. Their offices are filling up, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing, and yes, taking the functional medicine approach, it is going to be proactive. You're going to get you're going to get your hands dirty doing it. Meaning you're going to be taking action all along the way, and you'll be working closely with someone, and it's probably going to be a journey, and they will get to know everything about you because everything matters. Your lifestyle matters, your history matters, your genes matter, your current lifestyle, the things that you did before, things that you're currently doing now. But the beauty is that you're moving toward a better version of yourself, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's always an awesome direction to be going towards. So if you're looking at like two different people who are having like autoimmune scenarios, would you say that like their history of just everything that they've done in their life affects kind of how that plays out within them?
So everybody is so different. And this is where it does get tricky. Rarely is any autoimmune condition the same path that the other person had. Although tonight I'm going, and we're going to get to it shortly, there is a no doubt a underlining theme that is consistent amongst what happens. But there could be stressors. It could be a car accident 15 years ago, a divorce, or something else major. Like there's a lot of different things. Yet every body is different. So it's important that you are, and at least I'll encourage you to work closely with someone. And also with the information I'll share tonight, you can get this journey rolling by yourself.
Even today, right?
Yeah, even today. And there's a good likelihood, especially a lot of our listeners, they're already on this journey. And this is hopefully going to give you fuel to why we keep dialing it in and continue to improve. When we talk about eating clean, I often say when someone tells me they're pretty good at eating, how's your diet? They say pretty good. No, that's pretty good diet sucks, right? So there's reasons that we keep dialing it and keep making it better and better for ourselves, because once we get behind catching up on our health, one, it's not fun. And two, as we age, it has more challenges.
True that. So I know if the goal is not to target the symptoms, but what we want to do is target the systems. Can you give us a sense of where do we even start?
Yeah. So we'll go with the simple stuff first. So we're going to remove all the inflammatory foods, right? So we know that like the number one would be sugar. Sugar's got to go. And then we're going to put right behind that all the processed foods. So if you're putting things in your body, because this is what we're talking about, inflammation inside the body. If you're putting things in your body that we know cause inflammation, you're essentially setting yourself up to produce an autoimmune situation. So that should just go for a million other reasons as well. That should go. We got to get all that junk out. The processed foods, the soda, the refined carbs, the bad fats, all of that, the canola oil, anything you put in your body that you know causes inflammation. And that also includes, since we're in the middle of a cleanse right now, there are sometimes good foods that are pro-inflammatory to you. So those are going to have to go as well. No doubt about it. Everyone knows what I'm going to say next. Gluten's got to go.
I knew it, Bart. I knew you were going to say gluten.
And then we could add in to our diet very specifically antioxidant foods, anti-inflammatory foods. Those are going to be, the good ones, the cruciferous vegetables, the fruits and vegetables, the good animal proteins, things that help downregulate inflammation. So clean foods serve and help us build up the body, and bad foods break down the body. And I don't know that we could ever say that enough times. So I'm going to continue to say it, because if we're putting something in our body that the body rejects, it's always going to create an immune response. If you hit that button too many times, there's just a more likelihood that something's going to go wacky. So let's try not to hit the immune system button nonstop. And that's what happens every time we put bad food in our body. So really, number three, the big thing here is this is the home run right here. Heal up leaky gut. If you want to start somewhere, and it is simple in concept. The actions to do it are methodical. They're not hard, but heal up leaky gut. I would go as far as saying, consider everyone having leaky gut until proven otherwise. If you have leaky gut, it means literally what's on the inside of your intestinal walls is leaking out into your body, and it's not supposed to be there. It's going to produce inflammation every time you eat, even when you're eating good foods. And we see so many symptoms. So it could be leaky gut. You could have some small intestine bacterial overgrowth. There's anything in that realm. If you heal that first, you have moved way down the road in tackling any version of any autoimmune condition.
I know that you're probably going to give us some tools on how to fix leaky gut here in a moment, but are there other things that we can kind of hit on the front end of lowering these autoimmune responses?
Yes. So we don't have time tonight to go into the whole leaky gut protocol yet. I don't know if you have the ability we did it. We've covered it several times, and it's worthy of going back into one of our podcasts. I'm going to say it's probably a month or two ago that we did it, or maybe a little bit longer than that. But that is there's 4 steps to healing it up. And if you've never healed your gut, never brought yourself through that process, when you do, you will change fundamentally who you are. You'll have more energy, you'll have less brain fog, your joints will feel better, you lose some weight, you will be able to absorb more nutrients out of your food, you'll need less food in your life. All of the things that you really want and all the things that you're working toward, when you heal up your gut, that happens. And with that being said, Whitney, that's an ongoing process. We don't heal the gut and be like, all right, I'm fixed and I'm going to go back to the gluten. No, there's certain things that most likely we're going to eliminate. Anything that breaks down your microbiome, alcohol is a big one. So alcohol breaks down the microbiome, and which is the part that protects the gut and it kills off bad guys and absorbs good nutrients. But if we're breaking down that microbiome, that is one of the ways we develop leaky gut, antibiotic use, et cetera. So those are considerations. When the next part I wanted to say is that lifestyle is a huge part. Take a step back and just do an inventory and look at your lifestyle. If someone else had your lifestyle, would you consider that a healthy lifestyle? Are they getting enough sleep? Do they put nutrients in their body that feeds the body, that does not harm the body? Do they have thoughts that serve them? Are they taking actions that move them forward in life? And so that's how we kind of look at lifestyle. So imagine you not being you, but you being someone else, and you analyze them for a second. And I think if we step out of our own way for a second, we're like, whoa, that person probably get a little more sleep. Maybe they shouldn't, I don't know, drink so much or eat so much or drink so much soda or, eat so much chocolate or whatever it may be. But making an honest observation about lifestyle, super, super important. And then, of course, if you have lifestyle, let's throw some sleep in there. You only heal when you sleep. If you have an autoimmune condition, one of the best remedies is going to be get a good amount of sleep. If you're not a good sleeper, you're going to, unfortunately, provoke the body to be more inflamed more frequently. So sleep becomes a huge part of this. And that's why I like even things like there's wearables out there now, like an Oura Ring or Apple Watches that help us and coach us to look at what we're doing with our sleep and the temperature changes. Those are all ways that we can, especially your functional medicine doctor, can use that data and start to look at that data and start to say, well, okay, there's patterns here. And we could see the autoimmune conditions and those patterns, they'll start to make a lot of sense of what's going on with the body. And then I think we should at least, we'll get into these a little bit without any very specific protocols, but I definitely want to give some strategies when it comes to vitamins, minerals, herbs. And then also, Whitney, very specific to anyone out there that is using a company called Standard Process, is one of the primary company that I use when it comes to vitamins and minerals. And then MediHerb is the herbal company I use. The Standard Process line has something called a protomorphogen, PMGs. It's unique to their line. No one else has it. It is one of the most important part of my protocols that I use for people that have autoimmune conditions.
We have a whole special shelf of those PMGs in the office. Yes.
And what makes them so unique is that these protomorphogens are very unique to the tissue, organ, or gland that we're talking about. So, for example, there is a thyroid protomorphogen, PMG. There is a skin protomorphogen. So something like psoriasis, I probably should have mentioned that earlier. That's a big one it's a very, very common autoimmune condition where the skin is beating itself up. That's an inside out situation. So what I'll do in any of the protocols that we have, we will also include that gland specific protomorphogen. And it has become a secret weapon, quite frankly. So let me talk about some of the other broad important ones. Omega-3s are always going to be important. They're essential fatty acids. And essential is a key word here. So think of your fish oils, think of your salmon and your sardines and all that fun stuff. Those omega-3s critically important for helping your body, especially the lipid layer in your body, the one that protects the cells, to keep them strong. So we need to make sure that we have a good surplus of these essential fatty acids. So omega-3 is real important. We know vitamin D is a big part of the immune system. So that's a very good one, broad spectrum, that vitamin D should be part of any, most likely be part of any protocol when it comes to autoimmune conditions. And then from there are others that, again, without getting too specific of the individual, that I will typically use. Turmeric is one. We know there's a ton of research out there showing how effective the turmeric is, not only on joint inflammation, like we talked earlier, like if you were to exercise or you're out there playing sports, but also on systemic inflammation, on gut inflammation. So there's turmeric, there's omega-3s, and these are not uncommon. Literally, you watch Instagram enough today, someone's going to say, take turmeric every day, get a fish oil. And they're not wrong, because they do play an important role, especially in today's lifestyle. And again, if we were, 50, 100 years ago, maybe we didn't need them, but with the level of toxins that we face today, the level of stress that we have, things that interfere with our lifestyle, the outer rhythm we are with, circadian rhythm, there are so many things that lead us to the point where a healthy diet and lifestyle is important. And to play catch up, most likely we're going to need certain vitamins, minerals, and herbs. Speaking of herbs, there are a couple what I consider home run herbs here. So imagine for a moment, if you have an autoimmune condition, your immune system is always in play, because not always, but if it's active, we'll say that if you are in phase 2 or phase 3, where you're in that reactive or full blown phase, your immune system is essentially always on, and it's working. So some type of support for your immune system, especially herbs that have the ability to adapt. We've talked about herbs that can adapt. They're called adaptogens. And if we could have adaptogen herbs that were specific to the immune system to help it boost up when we needed to boost up, but also calm down when we needed to calm down. And this is very, very important for everyone out there, especially the practitioners that are here just grabbing some extra tidbits for their clinic. The herbs that we use, we want to make sure that these herbs, what happens in the autoimmune condition, we create this storm. We create an inflammatory storm within the body. So we would love to use immune modulators so the immune system doesn't go too high and too low. So for example, when we use a steroid, we're shutting down the immune response, but we've also shut off the immune system. And inherently, you can see that's problematic. So we want to use particular herbs. There's 2 particular ones that are kind of my favorites. And one is echinacea. Echinacea is the one, if you only have one herb to pick echinacea. It's a phenomenal adaptogen herb. It's an immune modulator. It can activate the white blood cells. It can also slow things down for them. And that's a really, really effective and really, really important one to use. The other one that's not heard is probably not as popular, yet I use it in almost all of my autoimmune conditions, is an herb called Romagna. There's another herb that is often paired with Romagna that is called a hemidesmus. It's not that common. That name isn't even spoken too much. It does an amazing job at suppressing the inflammatory response. So when we use that, combine it with something like Romagna or combine it with something like echinacea, which is a modulator, the beauty is that we're not going to go too high and not too low, and we let the body run its course and making sure that it's not beating the body down too much. And these are the type of herbs you would stay most likely on long term. So when someone says, or if you've ever heard that you don't necessarily get rid of an autoimmune condition, if you get into that full-blown phase, it's probably correct. If you catch it in phase 1, in the silent phase, there's a strong likelihood, if you take the right actions, you will never have the symptoms of that particular autoimmune condition. If you're taking these actions, you're taking a little echinacea and Rhamania, and those are the things you'd want to do, because you know in the background, if you get too run down, lifestyle gets too crazy for that matter, you would end up, exposing the possibility of this autoimmune condition. If you're in that phase 2, this is where you're going to need support, no doubt about it, because you have those active symptoms. And just suppressing the inflammation, that's when you get in trouble. That's when you could spend, 2, 3, 5, 10 years suppressing those symptoms. And when you get done with it, it just puts you into phase 3. So Rhamania, echinacea, vitamin D, omega-3s, turmeric, collectively, those are probably involved in just about all of my protocols, some a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. The individual really makes that happen. Yet even before those, though, leaky gut, because the beauty is, if you heal a leaky gut, you're on the road to suppressing all of those inflammatory responses.
Yeah, it's the foundational starting point, right? So that with the leaky gut repaired, truthfully, all of that nutrition can be absorbed.
Yes, and that's so if someone's listening tonight and says, well, what's the biggest takeaway? What's the biggest takeaway with autoimmune conditions? Fix your gut. That is the number one takeaway. Now, if you fix your gut and you still have a bunch of other issues, that's when you start to invest. And this is my opinion. That's when you start to invest more money and more time for more testing. The heavy metals, the Lyme, etc., because they may exist, but they also might get cleared up as we make those subtle, simple changes, because when you go after those heavy metals, you're going to have a healed leaky gut anyways. So those are kind of the downstream ones. And, so when someone thinks about, well, should I test, heck, we have tests now, I believe for dementia and Parkinson's, antibody tests. I don't know fully how accurate they are yet. There's a lot of different testing coming. Yet either way, any one of, if you're going to test for them, do all of this work first. Get the system stronger. Make sure that there's plenty of sleep in life. Make sure that you get your gut healed up, and make sure that you're starting to move in the direction of down regulating the root causes, which is all the toxins that are coming in, all the gluten that's coming in, the alcohol that's coming in, and the too much stress.
And just a question here from Zoom from Carla. Bart, the comprehensive panel that we work with, does it help to identify the leaky gut scenario, a little bit of SIBO or like other autoimmunes?
So it can help us identify. So there's some markers like the C-reactive proteins. So that wouldn't necessarily tell us about the joint inflammation, but it would tell us if there's systemic inflammation. So we start to add these up. Leaky gut, no. There are very specific tests for like celiac or gut permeability tests. I'll be honest with you, I don't run them that much. The symptoms are enough. And what are some of the symptoms? Bloating is one of them. Tired after meals, classic. You're tired after meals because your food leaked out into your body and you're having an immune response. That's not okay. So then we eat more an hour later because we didn't get any nutrients, so we're hungry. So we continue to eat. And when I just said that, most people are, well, wait a minute, that happens to me every time I eat. And so that's a real one right there. Brain fog, joint pain, added weight. All of these things are indicative that there's probably a leaky gut there. And when we heal up the leaky gut, so I would be worthy, anyone that thinks there's any consideration of a leaky gut, go back and find our leaky gut protocol or the leaky gut episode that we did, or call us if you'd like me to walk you through it. But I think we laid out a pretty strong protocol during that podcast that we did.
I think we did. And alongside these strategies of like cleaning up the diet and lowering the stress, are there other therapies that are recommended?
There are other things. These other things often take more expertise or more money for that matter. So for example, there are things called exosomes. Exosomes put them in the category of stem cells, and they help the human body repair your healthy cells. So in an autoimmune situation, you're damaging tissue, glands, bones, joints. Exosomes help heal them up. So it's not inexpensive, but there are levels that we can go, no doubt. Ozone therapy is another phenomenal one. If you have to downregulate infections, things like from like a Lyme or other things of bacteria that are in the body, where all these other measures aren't quite enough, there are definitely other strategies that you can do. And that is where most likely you're going to want to get with, someone who has been down that road. So it kind of directs you where and what and how to spend your time and money, because those things can add up. Yet if you've done all those things and you're still having challenges and you still know that things are wrong, there are more options.
And so thinking about that autoimmune conditions can affect humans, Bart, you and I both are dog lovers. I'm curious if you ever see these kind of symptoms in your pups as well.
Yeah, all the time is the answer to that. So yeah, might as well just, it's not even a digress. We'll just kind of take a side angle here. No doubt. Love my animals. So little shout out to all my pet owners right now. Your pets can go through all this. Most likely your animals are experiencing some leaky gut as well. Why? Because one of the first things we talked about, the causation of this, is what we're putting into our bodies, and that is poor food, right? And then think about how many times your dog does go on medications every time it has a symptom, right? So it's not uncommon that we have dogs that are on medications and poor food simultaneously, and we're suppressing symptoms all the time. So that system is the exact same. Some of the symptoms of it could be chronic licking of the paws, chronic ear infections, skin conditions. So very similar to humans, yet the symptoms show up a little bit different, but absolutely positively. Can the dogs have leaky gut? Can they have autoimmune conditions? Absolutely. Is the approach essentially the same? It is. We heal up the gut. We make the body stronger. We may have to also support the immune system along the way. Do they have skin conditions all the time? We don't often call what a dog has as psoriasis. We just label it as it's got allergies or, something going on with the skin. But there are many things that are acting as if, or could or should be labeled as autoimmune. So do dogs have the same issue? 100%. We've dealt with some of the dogs, especially with some of our rescues. And what are the protocols we put them on? We always put them on that one protomorphin PMG specific. If it's a skin issue, they get something called dermatrophin PMG. If it's adrenal specific, they get dranitrophin PMG, which could be like a Graves or a lupus or Addison's. Any of those, or a thyroid for that matter. If the dog is experiencing those conditions, we make sure that protomorphogen is there. And typically in our house, they'll get lots of sardines, so they get the omegas, so maybe get some cod liver oil. Same strategy, because the systems, organs, or glands, for the most part, need exactly what we do. So I'm not going to call that a digress. I think that was just a little sidestep to include our furry friends that we absolutely love. So it is very similar. And I think sometimes we step back and go, okay, can we help the human? Can we help the dog? It's not that different. Both of us need to eat real foods. Animals can only do it if we give it to them. We're setting up right now. We are setting up a conversation to bring my wife on here and talk about how to feed your dogs real food, which would be awesome.
I love learning from Kelly about that.
Yes. All right. We're gonna put that on one of our soon-to-be podcasts. So, in general, good question. Absolutely, itchy skin, ear infections, and one of the most common things that'll happen for an animal is they go on prednisone, and that is exactly what we're doing to humans. We're suppressing that inflammatory response, but it does not get to the root cause. So years ago, when Kelly and I didn't know that much of how to treat dogs, very much like how do we treat humans, we had a dog that was on and off prednisone for years. And looking back, it was a great learning experience, because when I look back, we basically suppressed symptoms, but we never got to the root cause. So it never really got better.
Well, it's really great to have the tools and feel empowered to know what step to take, whether it be for your kiddo or your pup or yourself.
Yes. Well, I think so that in general, I think that kind of comes to most of what I want to share about autoimmune conditions. And I'm going to just do a quick review of it all. One, it's anything can really cause this. It could be a stress, it could be lifestyle, but there are common ones. It's mostly going to start with what we put into our body, causing inflammation from the inside out. And yes, there are some genetic components. If we take the time to heal up our gut, we are going to be doing a big number on all potential 100 different autoimmune conditions that are out there. It is an ongoing process where we continue to work on the health of our gut and mostly improving lifestyle. It did not happen overnight, and it did not happen by accident. You didn't wake up one morning and had it. It was developed through sequences of being massively out of balance. There are so many wonderful tools and so many wonderful ways and so many wonderful people that can help us get to that happy place again and get to that healthy place, that we don't necessarily have to walk around with this kind of label of we have this autoimmune condition and it only goes downward from here. So take some action, get some results. Simple. I don't know that easy, but simple.
Beautiful. And so with that in mind, Bart, it brings us to our last question. What is one step that our listeners can take towards becoming superhuman?
And in that conversation, when we were just talking about the different phases, it made me just a reminder to me that let's continue to be super aware and intuitive about our body. And I think when we allow ourselves to do that, and not from a complaining perspective, but really just for aware, like what works for my body, and work within those parameters the best you can. If those parameters are getting tighter and tighter, then it means we probably have to do something to build more health. So continue with high level of awareness, continue to be super intuitive.
Gorgeous. Well, thank you all for joining us here at the Health Made Simple show.
Yes. And once again, thank everyone for participating, to being here tonight. Keep doing the thing, keep sharing it out, keep spreading the love here. And of course, continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, your overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.